Well, welcome back, everybody. You're in for a treat. We know we're standing between you and the cocktail parties for this evening, but it's going to be well worth your being here. Our next session's a panel where we're going to answer, I didn't say ask, I said answer, the question, what can the past 30 years of seniors' housing and care growth teach us about what's needed to be successful in the future? It's a panel I'm excited to moderate, and the conversation, I assure you, will be dynamic and thought-provoking. As a reminder, as you'll be hearing throughout the conference, at the close of today's session, you'll get an email with a brief 3-question survey. Really appreciate your only take you a few seconds, but to give us a response to help for our program committee. It really improves the quality of our programming, that it fits your needs and what you're looking for. Now, please join me in welcoming our panelists for today's panel. We have to my immediate left, Leanne Barney, President and CEO of Trilogy Health Services. Then we have, Stephanie Harris down here, CEO and Principal of Arrow Senior Living. Kurt Reed, Partner, RSF Partners. John Rios. This is a lot of verbiage, but I want you all to know, before I introduce John, normally I had a joke about his sweater, because he always, those of us that know him knows he wears very distinctive sweaters, very distinctive colors. Well, he's so honored to be on this stage with all of you today. He dressed up. So, John, we're a little shocked, but it's okay. So he is co-founder, operating partner of Chicago Pacific Founders, and founder chairman of CBF Living Communities. And last but not least, Stephen Vick, CEO of Signature Senior Living. So a great panel. And now I want, before we get into our panel discussion, I want to first ask John Rios, he of the wonderful sweater fame, for some of his perspectives as to what he feels all of us, as operators, as investors, what kind of perspective should we have as we look to the future of this industry? John?
Sure, happy to. Thanks for inviting me, Bob. Your walk-up music was very good too, by the way. Do we have that slide?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to spend the next hour talking about the last 30 years and all the different things that have gone well and poorly, and what you take from there. But I will say to you that I've been doing this for 26 years or so now. Our industry's been a C classroom. And if you're a B student in a C classroom, you've done pretty well. But now I think our industry is about to become a B classroom, and we have to become A students in it. And what that means is we can't rely on outsiders, other technology companies providing us with how our business should change and innovate and elevate. And there's an example that I use sometimes when I talk to my investors. It fascinates me. It's the history of the high jump. Now, it doesn't involve tennis rackets that you can now hit the ball 140 miles an hour. Doesn't involve golf clubs that hit it longer and straighter. Doesn't involve tennis rackets. Doesn't involve anything except a guy in his shorts and a pair of shoes, pair of sneakers, jumping over a bar. And so this is about a 120-year history of the high jump. And if you look all the way back to the early 1900s, they jumped over it with that kind of little scissor kick. And then you got to the 1920s, 1930s, and a little minor variation. It was the Western roll. And then the 1940s, it was the straddle. And then something unusual happened. Who remembers Dick Fosbury and the Fosbury flop? Oh, bunch of hands. So Dick Fosbury was a student at Oregon State University in the mid-1960s. And he wanted to be a great high jumper. And he happened to be in school with a couple of guys. One was an engineering PhD, and the other one was a fluid dynamics PhD. And they convinced him, incredibly, that if you arch your body in a certain way and jump backwards over the high bar, you'll actually elevate and do better. So he had nothing to lose. He thought it was interesting, and he was fearless about trying it. So he started doing it, and mixed results, and people would laugh at him, but then he got better. And then he started jumping higher. People stopped laughing so much. Then he set the American record. Then he set the world record. Then he won the gold in the 1968 Olympics. And now no one was laughing at him. And every high jumper in the world now does the Fosbury flop. They all jump over backwards. And my reason for bringing this slide in particular is we're going to be talking about, we've got 6 lessons learned that we're going to talk about, and they're part historical and part looking forward. But I think that we have to look to ourselves. This is a business. There's 3,200 people at this conference. The next 10 years is going to require pure human innovation. You need to think differently. We need to think differently about our product, about our services, and we have to be fearless about making changes and taking chances with it. And I'm sure that there will be big changes by people in this audience over the next 10 years, but you have to be fearless about it. You have to take the chance, and you have to let people laugh at you for a minute or two, and then you succeed. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you, Bob.
Great. Great setup. Yeah. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. We have to be fearless. So I want to, before we get into our discussion, also just set the table for a moment about what I'd call the what and the why for our discussion this afternoon. It's often said that those that don't know their history are frequently condemned to repeat it. By looking back at the last 30 years of growth in our industry, we're presenting to you today 6 lessons learned from both the successes, they've been notable, and the mistakes and failures, so that hopefully we can all be wiser in the next growth cycle. You'll find these 6 lessons learned in the conference app for this session. So as with all the PowerPoints, they're in the conference app, but here specifically, we're giving you these 6 lessons learned as 6 takeaways. Now, as we're all into planning for 2026, I want to take us back for where were we 30 years ago in the mid-90s? 1996, 1997 were the year of the assisted living IPO. Skilled nursing companies were consolidating with chains exploding in size. Some said for seniors housing and care, the future was so bright that you had to wear shades. There were 28 publicly traded skilled nursing companies, with Andy Turner growing Sun, Bob Elkins building IHS, among others. Those were the days of cost plus reimbursement model. There were nearly as many assisted living publicly traded companies at this time, with many with no history of positive earnings. As Brad Razuk commented to me the other day, assisted living was the pet rock of the stock market, like AI is for investors today. But a lot of things did not go as planned after the euphoria and rapid growth of the mid-90s. As we enter 2026, there are a lot of loud echoes of the same sentiments from 30 years ago. Capital jockeying to get in, tons of energy, and a sea of entrepreneurs, many of you here, excited, ready to launch the next dominant senior living platform. Are we on the verge of the next 30-year super cycle? Demand is high. Demographics are compelling. Supply growth is at record low levels. In addition, we now have reliable data available to both investors and operators. In fact, just earlier today at a press briefing, Nick Mapp and its CEO Eric Morton announced that they're expanding from the 140 markets they now cover to 210 markets in the first half of 2026, and then to more than 300 markets. But just those 210 markets, that'll be 85% of the US population being covered with data on occupancy and rates and so forth. So if we're entering a major new growth cycle, what can we learn from the successes, the challenges, the mistakes, and the failures over the last 30 years of industry growth so that we're wiser in the next cycle? Now, with that, I'd like to then turn, reminding you in your conference app, you've got all these lessons learned, but I'll also bring them up here, to our first lesson learned. Develop your business model starting with the customer you plan to serve and how you planned to serve them. It's the customer, stupid. Kurt, what do we mean by this? Why is it important? It seems a simple point. Is it simple?
I love oversimplification, Bob, because it allows me to make some really hyperbolic statements to get everybody all upset and paying attention. Wake up out there. It's really three things. It's more complicated than that. The best, and I think back over my 35 years being an investor, developer, operator in the space. And so when Bob asked me these things, I go into pattern recognition mode. What did I see where that increases the probability of success for anybody's growth plan around this point? So I'll give you three things that I've seen over time. One is a maniacal focus, a passionate focus on a particular customer that entrepreneur and business can really understand and know. But that's not enough. Because once you identify that customer, then you have to build a culture and an operating model to serve that customer. And even that is not enough. And then you have to create an environment within which you can serve that customer and operate with a margin of safety at a cost structure that allows you to do it again. In other words, raise money. So what was the best example that I can think of for the old folks in the room here? You'll remember holiday retirement. And you will remember an affordable IL product designed for that customer. It was a value for that customer. And the beauty of Bill Colson's design of matching that with what he called the co-managing couple. Two couples that would live in that 150-unit IL building, and they would be able to make that building their home that you are living in. So it was live with us. And within that model, he was very disciplined on his cost side so that he could deliver that in a stabilized year at a 15% unlevered return on cost. He built over 300 of those in the US, sold the company for over $6.5 billion. Yeah. Okay. And now I'll give you one quick example of someone, and this is to John's point, that you've never heard of that Marriott destroyed. We invested in a company with a guy called Ken Schick. And Ken Schick built 16 affordable assisted living memory care deals in the Midwest, very nondescript product. But he knew his customer. And he built a product that everybody laughed at. And I would talk to people about what he was doing. Oh, I'm building an affordable assisted living model, 2 people in a room, in a dorm room, and all these activities and all this common area stuff. And everybody said, you're nuts. You're going to get smoked. His business, he designed around the women serving that customer, the adult daughter who's supporting their moms, and the moms helping each other. It was a fabulously successful product, both financially and for those people working in the buildings. So it's the customer, stupid, but there's more to it.
Okay. Leanne, let me ask you, how has this focus on the customer being served shaped Trilogy's business model? You all have had a lot of growth through the years, but talk to us about your focus on the customer, what that's meant, who you've seen as your customer, how that's shaped what you provide, and also where you've gone.
Right. So Trilogy was founded in 1997, right about the time period you were talking about, with a business plan that Randy Bufford created, a unique business model that had 4 basic core operating principles that we still operate by today. First and foremost was the customer experience, creating a hospitality type experience in a healthcare setting. The second was to have a continuum of care. So today we serve, and even back in 1997 when we were started, served across the continuum: short-term rehab, skilled nursing, assisted living, memory care, and now independent living within one campus community. Really unique concept at the time, because as you said, there was the skilled nursing on one hand, and then you had the assisted living. And so his idea was to bring it together because people were going to age in place and need services, and how could we meet them across that continuum? Third principle was to stay Midwest focused. One of our first vision statements was to be the best healthcare company in the Midwest, and we still keep that out in front of everybody because we've stayed in the Midwest, and we knew that we know those markets. We had operated in them. We knew the labor market and the communities we were serving, and we didn't want to go outside of that. So we've stayed.
I tried to tempt you many times to come to Texas, and you wouldn't come.
Yeah, so we've stayed in.
The danger of temptation. That's not, we didn't put that down as a lesson learned, but it is a point.
That's a tourist trap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then finally, by doing all of those things, how could we drive a high quality mix and attract as much private pay in our market, which we obviously do on the senior housing side, but we want to do that in the skilled side as well by adding, customer service and hospitality as a focus. So again, if you look at our footprint, we're in the Midwest. If you look at our properties, we have the continuum of care everywhere. It's not for everybody, but it was a business plan that we've stuck with. And so I would say, again, lesson learned. If you find something that works and that you're good at, when you start straying from that is where I think you see issues, along the way and throughout our history. But I also think that a key to that, Kurt, is to be able to have strong convictions and show your success so that you can show your capital partners when you go to raise money, this is what we do and we're really good at it. Don't ask us to do something else. If you like what we're doing and you're investing in us, then you got to back us for this and not ask us to get on a different horse.
Yeah. And though there's not time to go into it, just adding on to that, when you think of National Guest Homes and they're being purchased, and you think of Holiday and it's being purchased, and each new owner investor came in and said, we want to change some things about your model, we can do it better. And let's just say they didn't have the same success, to put it mildly. All right. I want to move us on to our second point, and if I could ask if we could leave these points up a little longer so that people can see them, I'd appreciate it. So our second lesson learned: engineer your business with the end in mind. What's your North Star, your organizing principle? John, again, what do we mean by this takeaway? Why is it so important?
So that says engineer your business with the end in mind, but I would say begin your business with the end in mind. Too many times over the last 20 years, I've watched companies come into play that really didn't have a plan. They didn't know exactly what kind of communities they wanted to own. They didn't know what size. They didn't know what product mix. They didn't know what geographies. They just wanted to be in seniors housing. And the truth of the matter is, if you just think about it, like for my company, we're 11 years old now, so we had a 10-year plan. We've exceeded that 10-year plan by pretty sporty numbers. We're pleased about it. But if you don't know what product you like, are you IL-AL? Are you AL memory care? Are you IL-AL memory care? In our case, we stay away from skilled nursing. So what happens is you build your company, your talent and skill sets around the kinds of businesses that you want to own. And then you go buy those communities that fit your talent set and fit your ability to do well. Too many companies don't do that. And you have to plan your organization that way. And you have to measure it regularly. You have a 10-year plan? Okay. Every 2 years, take inventory. Where are you? How have you done against your plan? It's not linear, but you need to constantly be looking at it.
Then, Stephen, I want to come to you then. What was your end in mind when you started Signature Senior Living? And if you want to give some other examples, since you've been an operator for a number of years, and I'm interested in sort of how you think about this and what was your North Star, your end in mind?
Sure, thank you. I have 8 steps here. My North Star was really understanding my customer and to keep it simple. That 5-year, 10-year plan that you're talking about, but keeping it simple. And that would be a frail resident. That's who I was looking for. Someone that needed assisted living, that was needing some skilled nursing care at a price that was below a nursing home cost in a private room. And so that was what I really centered the product that we built for. My lesson that I learned from the Alterra Go-Go days, where we thought if we built it, they would come. We were part of that 97, 98, Nick. And we were opening a building every 32 hours. And the lesson I pulled away from...
Stop on that. Did you hear what he just said?
That was hours, not days.
Okay.
Impressive.
Yeah, don't do that.
You can't make this shit up.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Lesson learned, don't do that.
Number
Is
3.
to build a strategic, comprehensive business plan with the end in mind. And so I started Signature, and I had a partner that wanted to retire in 5 years. And so we designed a plan to build 10 buildings in Northeast Texas, 3 hours away from Dallas, that we could drive around, do this loop, and focus on the high acuity resident that I just defined with a mid-market product. And so we understood the competition. We felt like we could compete in those markets, and we picked the market specifically for that product that we designed. We built all 10 buildings in 1 year because I needed that management fee to fund the team that we had. So we did all 10 at once. Don't do that. But we ended up doing 12 buildings, and we opened them, we filled them, we sold them, and we did it in less than 4 years. And so that end in mind is to have that business plan, keep it simple, understand your customer, and do it.
And you executed according to plan. Yeah. Great. John, do you want to give any further examples just from, you mentioned about CPF Living Communities, and as you think about that, your career at Brookdale, now the operating company, and the other examples you wanted to share?
Well, my core competency, personal, was pure luck. That was my competency. But I would say that, so I came out of the hospitality business. Guy Geller, who's our CEO now, hospitality background. So what did we do? We bought a lot of primary IL, smaller AL memory care components in each building because we wanted to have a high hospitality quotient in our buildings. And that's what we've done, and we've repeated over and over and over again. I think we're up to 70-something communities. And I saw that we're at 95% occupancy, so we're not charging enough.
Good. All right. Let's move then to our third lesson learned. Again, these are all in the app because I want to challenge you to make use of these, not just to be entertained before drinks. So, lesson learned number 3, make sure your capital partner understands and supports your business model. Customer strategy must inform capital, not vice versa. Your capital plan should increase the odds of success of your strategy, not its short-term profitability. So Kurt, again, why is this, what do we mean? Why is this so critically important that we've made this one of these lessons learned?
Okay, we're in a new world, everybody. The first 30 years of my career, interest rates went from 14 to 0. If you can't raise real estate capital in that environment, go be an Uber driver, okay? That is not the environment we're in anymore. So the best companies, even during that time period where real estate capital was the easiest to access, going back to what John talked about earlier, they started with a strategy. They started with a goal. They started with a company they wanted to be in the future. And then they got capital that informed and was in service to that goal. Leanne said it the best. One of the reasons why Trilogy has such amazing staying power is they start with their business strategy and then they find investors that will be in service of that strategy. So I can't tell you the wreckage out there. There's so many companies that have got it, that do it backwards, okay? That is not the right way to increase your probability of success. And we're here on stage with people that focused first on where they are going and why, and then engineer backwards for success. And one of the favorite questions I get, but I'm starting my company. I'm shucking and jiving, and we're up here on stage with the best shucker and jiver ever in our history, Stephanie Harris. So we need to
Yep.
we need this as an example. So when I give you the, okay, I've got a plan, I'm going to work backwards, going to do all this, take that with a grain of salt.
So as we switch to Stephanie then, so one takeaway might be that when you start a senior living company, not having a capital partner with which to contend might make life simpler.
Yes.
So
Might.
Stephanie, you started a consulting business first.
Yep. Yep.
And you consulted in turnarounds, and then you've built that into a very successful operating company and management company. Talk a little bit about this lesson learned in the context of how you've built Arrow Senior Living.
Sure. So I actually entered my career in senior living in the very late 90s, 1999, and as a part of a cleanup crew, cleaning up some of these messes we're talking about here. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, because what it required me to do is to be creative. The typical didn't work. And we were able to select, pick, kind of where we wanted to go. It wasn't about being regionally specific at that time, because, typically we were trying to clean up a mess that even a regional operator couldn't clean up. But what it did to us is it gave me, in 1 year, I'd faced 30 different kinds of clients. It allowed me to think about what kind of capital partner would I want to work with, but it also gave me the freedom to be creative. And you talk about the Fosbury flop, that's turnaround solutions, because we were so counterculture. I remember being scoffed at the ideas of what we were trying to accomplish, but we could color outside of the lines and it would work. And I wouldn't trade the opportunity to be able to do that, because it informed what I wanted to do, what ultimately became Arrow Senior Living. We rolled our consulting business over time to stay focused, and then we found the right capital partner. We were very fortunate. We were backed by the O'Reilly family and Omni Senior Living on new development, so we could work on getting it right from the very beginning. And their strategy is, they're bought into the strategy that we bring to the table, that we can do things a little different and it's that much better. And I'm super grateful, because I took 10 years living in buildings and dealing with people at their worst moment and the biggest crisis. I remember getting calls at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning because a gentleman was going to lose his business. And you really learn how to stay pretty cool, calm, and collected in pretty troubling situations. And you learn to approach relationships on what could become the worst possible day. And if you can manage through that, it really informed, I think, our strategy. But ultimately, it's really helped us weather the various storms we faced.
So one of your key phrases was talking about your capital partner in development really bought into your strategy.
Absolutely.
And that's something I think's been echoed up and down here. Kurt, in his intro on this point, your capital sees the strategy, sees what you're doing, and they want to support that. They want in, versus you want in on their capital, and you'll do whatever they want in order to get access to their capital. Two very different approaches. Again, we're saying a lot of simple things, but I hope all of you realize huge multi-million-dollar mistakes have been made because of not following these simple things. So with all the enthusiasm, which is wonderful to see that's out there at this conference, that's why we thought it would be so helpful to look at these lessons learned.
So Bob, can I make two
Yes.
points? I mean, I'll be short, but they're important points, okay? The first thing is, from an investor standpoint, the classic go-to joint venture is like the vanilla structure, everybody. I think it's the stupidest structure an operator could choose. I don't get it. Give me one argument why you are aligned with your capital partner when you're putting up 5% and you don't control the asset and you're trying to create an operating business that has some legs, has the ability to recruit people, has the ability to grow over time. What kind of a crazy structure would that be? I can't imagine any business school in the country saying to an operator, that's a great idea. Why don't you go get 8 boards of directors, 8 different joint ventures to run your company? Like, that's dumb. Okay. From an investor standpoint, that's like vanilla. Like, I have vanilla every day. Ice cream. I'm going to eat that up. Second thing is, think about risk and control. One of the things that I loved about watching Randy and Leanne as they build their business is they took risk, but they had control over what they were doing. And one of the ways that great businesses can build multi-generational wealth in private companies is to own and control your assets long term. If you own your asset, it's on you. You can't blame your investors, and you get to reap all the rewards. So again, pattern recognition, when I look across the people that are super successful, these two right here, they own and control their destiny, their assets. They don't farm it out to somebody else. They don't have misalignment of interest. Think about that. Sorry, I had to.
We just wanted to make sure if you thought that this was going to be a plain vanilla session with plain vanilla statements that everyone would come onto the cocktail hour and say, I agree with completely, then you're in the wrong session. So hopefully, again, we want to challenge some of not the enthusiasm, but we want to challenge with some simple observations what may be otherwise some simplistic courses that people will follow, and to follow them into some really bad mistakes. So with that, let's go on to our 4th lesson learned. Our 4th lesson learned is to be conservative in your capital structure. Being over-levered is your Achilles heel. Do you have a margin of safety appropriate to the level of risk you're taking when things don't go according to plan? Don't price to perfection. John? All right. Why is this an important takeaway for all the people in the audience here excited to grow the next great senior living operating platform or investment platform?
So your comment just before that was the key point around lesson number 4. Don't price your deal to perfection. It happens way too often. To go backwards for a second, on Kurt's point about your capital alignment with your partners, my first fund 11 years ago was about $250 million I raised, and took a while, wasn't easy, and we had this one group who will remain nameless who wanted to give me $100 million by himself. Very wealthy, very famous guy, that's why I'm not mentioning who he is. But after about 5 or 6 meetings, I realized I can't stand this guy. And there's no way I'm going to be with him for the next 10 years. Yeah. So I literally told him, keep your $100 million. And he thought I was nuts. And he was probably right. But don't be afraid to say no. Capital structure is really important. And too often I see, and we saw it during COVID, where things were starting to get good and all of us people were building communities with 15% equity and 85% debt. that's a disaster because things will go wrong. There will be downturns. And if you can't put 35, 40% of equity into your community, you shouldn't get it, shouldn't buy it. And if you can't do it, then go get some joint venture partners that can put the money in with you. But downturns will happen. Don't price to perfection. Have sufficient equity so that you can make decisions that will better the community and better your services and better your performance over that 10-year time frame, but doesn't bootstrap you because you had a bad 6 months or something happened, that existentially you can't control. Don't do that. If you can't put 35, 40% into a deal, don't do the deal. If you don't have true alignment that you can actually get along with your capital for the next decade, because they're going to have a lot to say about what you do and don't do, then don't pick them.
Stephen, you're smiling over there. I have a feeling that's the smile of some scars and some lessons learned yourself through your long career as an operator in our space. So what are some of your thoughts on this, some of your experience in terms of the need to be conservative in your capital structure? Don't price to perfection.
Yeah, thank you. Again, my experience from Altera, when we didn't have the money to satisfy the banks, I learned that debt is not your friend. But this is a real estate-focused business that requires capital, lease, and debt is mandatory. And so how do you do that? So when I built the Signature plan, I built the pro forma that created a 15% unlevered return on the total investment at a 90% occupancy at a below-market conservative rental rate. I knew the market, I knew what the customer was paying, and I knew if I could build a new product with better amenities and services and offer assisted living with a registered nurse to oversee the skilled part in these rural or suburban markets, I knew I had a higher chance of success. But I had to be the owner of no. I said no to a porte-cochere. I said no to a theater. I said no to a swimming pool. I said doors, not drawers and furniture. I didn't buy the 10-year furniture. I focused only on the customer and their higher acuity needs and didn't build anything else or extra that would not support that frailty at the mid-market price to get that return. And consequently, when I had higher occupancy and higher rates and was able to control the labor costs, my returns became higher than that when I was able to sell those buildings. So you have to be the owner of no and say no. And I couldn't justify having a porte-cochere. It sounds weird, stupid, but for a higher acuity resident, the porte-cochere, to get a 15% return, to make it successful, I had to say no.
Well, I'd like to have others, all of you have seen this experience, but I just want to, what are some unexpected curveballs? I'm thinking now the GFC, the great financial crisis. I'm thinking in skilled nursing, the move from a cost plus reimbursement model to prospective payment system. Let's talk about what some unexpected curveballs happened in these past 30 years, how that affected some companies that had been really successful. Because the point of this is, whatever your strategy is, if it works when things go according to plan, and that's the only time it works, that's not a good strategy. Because things won't always go according to plan. We're dealing now with unbelievable uncertainty. Mm-hmm. And that will be a theme of many of our sessions tomorrow. All the uncertainty. How do you make business decisions in the midst of it? So there are all kinds of curveballs. So again, want to come back. Leanne, Kurt, either of you want to just tackle what happened when we moved from cost plus to prospective payment system? What happened in the SNF world?
You go from a viable, growing business to an over-leveraged, shrinking, or melting ice cube. And so what looks like a thoughtfully capitalized growth plan becomes a noose around your neck. And there are a lot of examples, but the ones that you talked about, Bob Elkins, you talked about Sun, the skilled nursing business that had to go through a transition from cost plus to fee for service was not structured properly. That was a business that at the public company space had leverage on top of leverage. And don't be fooled by accounting gimmicks that make you look better than you are. That industry couldn't survive leverage on top of leverage. Ericsson, one of our most famous and currently incredibly successful company today, had to go through a complete bankruptcy restructuring because they had leverage at the property level and they leveraged the management company to create equity. They didn't raise equity. And John was really proud of that until we get to the GFC, and then leverage on top of leverage equals bankruptcy. So you can have an incredibly successful product. And I can tell you, the customers at his communities, his giant communities, were all still thriving while he was going through a bankruptcy. And, I was staying up for 2 days straight, bidding and losing to billionaires. But, that compounding leverage is just, please don't. As John said, just don't do it.
Or put another way, leverage when everything's going according to plan and everything's working great seems like your friend. But all of a sudden, with the flip of a switch, external events that you may have no control over, suddenly leverage becomes your Achilles heel and becomes your downfall.
It's the hardest thing for somebody to do is when the lenders are beating your door down, that is the time to sell equity. Did you hear that? When the lenders want to lend you money, you sell equity. That is a hard discipline to do. But those who can do that take advantage of peaks and capital flows, and they get the best price and more control, and then they're set up for the future.
Okay. All right, I want to be conscious of our time. So I want to move us on then to our fifth lesson learned. It's abbreviated here. I'm going to read the full lesson learned as you'll find it in the app as a takeaway. Maintain your focus. Beware of getting away from what you know well and what you are good at. Product types, business lines, geography, etc. Understand the relationship between operational complexity and growth. The more complex the business, the operating business, the greater the error rate and the greater the challenge to scale, especially nationally. So, Kurt, what do we mean by the more complex the business, the greater the error rate and the greater the challenge to scale? And why is it so important to understand the danger of getting away from what you know well and what you are good at? Many would say, well, if you've done well, then that offers the opportunity to go into whole new areas where you can now, with new products, new geographies, you can repeat that success. And there's all kinds of capital lined up that says, come here, you've been successful doing this. We're quite sure that you'll be successful doing that.
So
is there a trap?
Yeah, there's a tourist trap here, okay? So I'll step back, Bob, and put our sector in context to, the rest of the real estate world. So if you think about businesses that are relatively simple, let's start with like the industrial business, okay? So you compare that business, I got a warehouse, I'm gonna lease it to Amazon, okay? And I'm gonna lease it to them for 15 years, and I'm gonna try and do that again. Okay, there's not a lot that you need to do to scale that globally. You might need to know some different laws, land use laws, but that is a very scalable business. So if anybody knows the REIT world, there's a company called Prologis. It's one of the largest companies in the real estate ecosystem. It's a globally integrated industrial business. Okay, Great, you can scale that. Leanne's already given you a little lecture here on how she has the 3 H's, healthcare, hospitality, and housing, all in one campus. And they knew from the beginning that they needed to stay focused. And that mission creep from that would create extraordinary risk for them. And as, what did Stephen say? Own the power of no. So when I step back again, pattern recognition, Bob, I can see a company closer to multifamily or industrial businesses that have fewer moving parts that could be scaled nationally. And that's what Bill Colson did with Holiday. It's a very simple business. He's very focused on it. And the error rate was low. I look at a company that provided lots of different services, lots of different businesses, a company that John used to run. That is a difficult business to scale nationally and consistently over time. The error rate is higher because of the complexity of the operation to be neat in different geographies. So that's a simple way to think about it. Maybe that's overly simplified, but that's how I think about it.
Well, Leanne, you and Randy, Trilogy's founder, Randy Bufford, when you started, you were doing all 3. So we were doing skilled, highly regulated, reimbursement model, really need to understand each state that you were in. You made the decision you were going to focus on the Midwest. So, but I mean, in one sense, you had a really complex operating business because you're doing skilled, but also doing private pay senior living. And you're doing it all on one campus.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about the discipline of maintaining that focus and what that meant as you were successful. Maybe give us a few illustrations, as I know there are many for you and Randy, and kind of how you, was it easy to maintain that focus? Anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that was again a core operating principle that Randy had, and so he was always very disciplined to that. When Kurt would call and say, "You want to come here or there," but I would say that yes, our business is very complex because of all the service lines we offer, and then just as even if you were a standalone SNF. The regulatory environment of every state is different. The reimbursement is different. So the more complex your business, I believe, obviously the less rope you have, but you also have to have a little more control. And that's why we stayed focused in geographic areas that we knew the states, the good, the bad, whatever it looked like, at least you know what you're dealing with in each one of those states. And so it was less, it lessens the complexity a little bit.
What's the state that you have the most number of properties in?
Indiana,
And how many do you have?
over 60.
Okay.
Indiana.
I hear all the time from people, oh, I can't grow in my state. I got to go somewhere else. I got to go to another market. You have 60 in Indiana.
Yes. And the clustering has a lot of advantages to us from an employee perspective, an oversight perspective. People say, well, you cannibalize yourself. We don't. Most people go within 5 miles for their healthcare needs, and they want to be close to family. So we were able to grow within the 130 campuses, really within concentrated 4 states, 2 in Wisconsin. But I would just say that you do have to, that's why it's good to be disciplined to what you're doing. And then I would say that the other thing that Randy was always very disciplined to was making sure our capital partners knew that, and turning down capital partners for whatever reason, whether you liked them or not. But mostly it was to say, hey, they know what we do, they buy into it. They're not going to ask us to go to Texas. They're not going to ask us to get out over our skis. Yeah. Because that would dilute our business and our model and what we do.
Well, Stephanie, you've started with Turnaround Solutions, consulting, building an operating company, and now really grown. So share with us some of your lessons learned on this in terms of particularly how do you maintain your focus in light of what I'd call both the demands for growth and the benefits of growth, which can be real, scale, so on and so forth. And as a management company, maintaining your focus, does that lead at times to difficult conversations you have to have with your capital partners?
Sure, sure, absolutely. I would say that you have to practice saying no. Now, as our core value, no is a KNOW. So, but sometimes there has to be a hard line no. And I think the one thing that I really take from our consulting side is that we had to focus on one problem at a time, one business at a time. And a lot of early success was my hyper focus. I mean, I was in the weeds on way too many things. John can attest to that. So much so that you almost question, is the company any more than her control? And it's been interesting that I've been able to convert that focus into an organization and our growth, in that we figured out how to incorporate the technology into the dedication to where we were going to deploy resources, how we're going to put teams together. If our whole kind of company philosophy is, if it's difficult, we're interested. If it's easy, it's boring for us. And so we try to do everything the hard way. So it gets us kind of like in a position where we can really optimize each single community that we work with. And I think that's a little bit of a shift where most people are, let's grow by fees. We're saying, no, let's grow by really driving margin, figuring out a way to create creative revenue streams. We were talking to our partner, and he thinks that Arrow's probably the largest guide recipient right now. And it's like, we wouldn't have gotten there had we not worked on these little details that really augment the business and created a reputation for us that we could execute. But I can tell you, some of the greatest things that ever happened to us is when we exited relationships that were unhealthy, that were detracting from the core business, that would distract our focus. It would be 2 or 3 communities that would take more time than relationships that were half of our portfolio. I do think it's very important that operators understand you can say no. And it's absolutely important. You are at an equal seat at the table. I think things are shifting to where there's way more understanding, or way more of our future is going to be determined by the success of our internal operations than the real estate relationship that's established on the front end. So it is important that you set up in the very beginning the right kind of parameters. I call it directing traffic with our capital partners, that we upfront are going to cover the rules of the road. Like, this relationship is going to communicate this way. We're going to give you access to data. There's certain ways that we're going to establish boundaries of where our executive directors can run the business, not just run your whims of questions. And I think that if you can't draw those lines on the front end, that is one of the worst things for a growing operator. And I found that where I have screwed up is when I've made an allowance or thought that I could overcome a red flag at the front end. If there's a red flag before you close a deal, bounce. Don't be afraid to say no in those relationships, even if it's down to the wire.
So for all of you aspiring to build that next dominant senior housing management company platform, but believe that it's critical that you say yes to whatever the capital partner is bringing you, remember what you just heard. You're willing to, oh, well, gee, that's less than we want, but they're willing to do business with us. They're willing to bring us these 3 troubled properties. In return, we can say we now have a portfolio. That may be a really bad mistake from which your operating company might not recover. So I want to switch to our final, we're going to run out of time here, so I want to switch to our final point, our final lesson learned. And again, I'm going to read the full one. Invest in building an organizational culture and demonstrating trust in your team. What's your organizing principle for how you will make more meaningful work experiences for your employees, and does your operating model truly support that? And in addition to that, I would add, your people are the key to execution of your business plan, and figuring out how to energize and motivate them is key to attracting and retaining them. So how will you make meaningful work experiences for your employees, and does your operating model truly support that? So John, unpack this a little bit for us.
Well, so Guy Geller and I talk about this all the time. If you have 10 problems and you solve 9 of them, but the problem that still remains is a people problem, you're going to have 10 new problems very soon. Always solve for your people problem first, and then a lot of the others get taken care of on their own because you got the right people. A dear friend of mine who was on our board and just died recently, George Shultz, who was Secretary of State and Secretary of the Treasury, and an amazing American. He used to say to me, John, he says, trust is the coin of the realm. When he dealt with Gorbachev and when he would deal with other world leaders, he would say, trust is something you gain by the ounce and lose by the pound. So as we built our company and our organizations, we have a lot of them, we've always said, build the trust in the organization. Make sure the people that work with and around and for you trust you. And the question that starts with that is, are you trustworthy? Do you do things that people feel proud to be associated with you at? And there's lots of ways to think about an organization. Some have 5 and 6 and 7 layers going up. Some are very flat. We're very flat because my personal feeling is the more layers, the more links there are, when somewhere down those links, one breaks, then everything below that's broken. So I like wide, flat organizations with great talent as low in the organization as possible. And I always laugh when we talk about culture. Like, culture is, everybody has a culture, just a lot of them suck. So you can't use culture as the way to measure things. It's character. Does your organization have character? And are you trustworthy? And are you developing the talent at the lowest level possible? And by that I mean at the executive director level, and give them the ability to make mistakes. Give them an ability to be fearless, back to the Fosbury flop. In our organization, and Guy believes in it completely, is there is no penalty for doing things that don't work out, trying new things. There's only a penalty if you don't try anything new. Because we don't want coin-operated communities by coin-operated executive directors. I want people that think creatively, act creatively, are fearless about trying new things because they know they're not going to get in trouble. I mean, we have a big file in my office it's called all of John's really great ideas that haven't worked out. And that's fine. I want everybody in my companies to have that kind of a file. That's how organizations work, by driving it to the lowest level, making talent and opportunity and the ability to take chances and not be penalized for it. You're going to have a successful organization.
Yeah, and what's that look like at Trilogy in terms of investing in culture and creating meaningful work experiences for your team members?
Right, well, I agree with John. Everybody says they have a great culture. They put it on their website. But how do you really show that is through reinvestment in your employees. And it has to be tangible investment, not just wages, not just benefits, but how do we invest in their retention? And what we've chosen to do at Trilogy is through education and growth opportunities. So we have a very strong apprenticeship program for almost every hourly position within our organization, that you can come to us in high school, right out of high school, and we pay for you to grow along the way. And our retention statistics for people that engage in those programs, whether it's going to be a certified caregiver, paying for them to go to nursing school, someone in the dietary department, we have an online program that they can take courses on to improve and become what we call a Trilogy 4-star chef. So we have several young ladies and gentlemen within the organization that started with no education in healthcare and now run buildings for us, skilled continuum of care buildings, because they've gone through all that career pathing with us. So when we talk about being successful as an organization, if you're successful financially, you have to put it back in the thing that drives your engine, and our employees drive our engine. And so you have to make that reinvestment and then show them, look at what we're doing, look at the people that we've invested in, look at the career growth paths. And again, it proves out in the retention side. So,
all right, we're going to have a lightning round here to close. Lightning round means you've only got 30 seconds. If you take 15, that's even better. What's one thing that's been said up here by anyone or not been said, but I want each of you to give one comment for people to remember as they walk out of here today. This has been a session on lessons learned from growth in the industry of the last 30 years as we look to what seems to be the start of another significant growth cycle. So, Stephen, I'm going to start with you at that end.
Having been in the business for 35 years, I'm aging in place myself now. And I just think back of 95 and 96 and 97, the go-go days and the public companies and all that, and the really, really incredible leaders that we had the pleasure of working with. And my encouragement to you and my ask of you is there's 10 to 15 million people in America that cannot afford $10,000 a month. And one of you, hopefully a lot of you, will find what we did in the 90s of creating assisted living and an alternative and institutional skilled care. I just hope some of you come up and work and figure out this affordable model. Because it's a huge, huge, big need, and there's a lot of people that need it.
Great, thanks. Stephanie.
I would add, and actually, John, it's probably challenging your comment about lessons learned number 6. I think our organizational structure will actually create an opportunity for us to crack some of the code to adding and growing margin in our new environment. I think collaborative business model is creating networks of people instead of hierarchical structures. I'm a believer in a flat organization, but I think we're going to continue to elevate to a networked, collaborative way we organize our home office structures in network with our communities, to what we need to do to rethink the department head structure that really is pretty consistent about any single community you walk into today. There's more opportunity to unlock margin in figuring out more creative ways to manage middle management leadership.
Right. John.
So she's been terrifically successful at that. But that's why Baskin & Robbins has 31 flavors, right? So there's lots of different ways to do it, which is great. My only comment from here is we were talking about talent, and we're talking about the fact that things are constantly changing. Don't be allergic to change. Too many people are. Don't be it.
Good.
So I think the motto, everybody here, should be change, change, and adapt. And the capital markets have changed radically in the last 5 years. And that puts everybody in a different stance than the 35 years prior. So think outside the box, think differently, and think how you're going to increase the odds of getting to your 10-year plan by creating a margin of safety in everything you do.
Leanne, final word.
Yes, we have a Jim Collins saying at Trilogy that you preserve the core and you stimulate progress. So don't forget what your core is and what you're good at. Preserve that core, but stimulate progress along the way in how you do it.
Great. Well, our panelists have shared with you then 6 lessons learned from the past 30 years of growth in seniors housing and long-term care. And I want to challenge all of you here today and your teams, no matter how good and compelling and seemingly can't miss your operating strategy, your investment strategy is for this next cycle of growth in the industry. I want again to challenge you to take these six lessons learned. Again, download them, they're in the app, and take them back to your team and use them. And I would encourage you, perhaps invite in a couple of others, folks you trust that are outsiders to your company, but whom you trust. And then with that, assess your growth strategy, assess your business and operating model. Look at some of these different questions we've looked at. Do you have an appropriate margin of safety for the risk you're taking? Are you priced to perfection? And are you investing in your people first? and foremost, or primarily in your buildings? What's your North Star? All of these questions. So I encourage you to do this. And especially if you're super confident, super cocky, then it should be a no-brainer. Of course, I can do this because we're gonna come out and we're gonna say, wow, we've thought of all these things. You know, they thought they were so brilliant. We thought of it all with the plan we put together for the next 30 years. But just in case you're misfiring on one of them, this session will have been well worth it. And so, again, don't just be entertained. Use this. We want all of you to be the folks that put together those really successful operating models and investment structures and models for the next 30 years. And yes, also, thank you, Stephen, that also looked at solving this middle market challenge and meeting this enormous need that's out there. That's also an incredible blue ocean opportunity for those that can figure it out. So with that, please join me in thanking our panelists, Leanne, Kurt, John, Stephanie, and Stephen. Again, please just, it'll only take you 20 seconds, 10 seconds, fill out the survey, give us your thoughts, and I hope you'll join us at the welcome reception in the Lone Star Ballroom on level 3. The theme tonight is Denim and Diamonds, appropriate for Austin. I also want to remind you tomorrow morning, we have an early start. We have a special program at 7 a.m. I know that sounds brutal. We promise really strong coffee, but we're going to have a screening of the award-winning film Familiar Touch. It offers a powerful portrait for mainstream theater audiences. This is not a special documentary that's going to run late night on PBS. This is a mainstream audience commercial film that has won Best Actress awards. It has won Best Debut Film. It has won Best Director awards. But it's about living with a woman living with dementia in a senior living community from the perspective of the resident, this individual, the family, the caregivers, and other residents and staff in the communities. You won't want to miss it, even though the hour is early. That's at 7 o'clock here, and following that up, we'll have a panel discussion about that film and about the whole area of dementia care and the opportunities and challenges for our sector to raise the bar in what we're offering. So thanks again. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you, and have a great rest of the conference.